Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be peeling back the curtain on, well, the tech you use constantly, stuff you probably don't even think twice about.
Yeah, things like the AI in your phone's assistant or the GPS that, stops you getting lost.
Exactly. And smartphones, electric cars, they all feel so now, right? So, our mission here is to dig into some really interesting source material. It's excerpts from an article, The Forgotten Origins of Today's Greatest Tech, GPS, ChatGPT, Tesla, and more. We want to uncover the surprisingly long and twisty histories behind these technologies that often feel like they just appeared overnight.
Right. And the article really hammers home this point that, the whole overnight success thing in tech is pretty much a myth. It shows how what looks like, well, magic today is actually built on decades, sometimes even centuries of groundwork, failed attempts, slow progress.
Hidden histories.
Exactly. We're looking for those deep roots.
Okay, let's dig into that first one then. Artificial intelligence, AI. The source kind of busts that myth straight away, doesn't it? That AI is brand new.
Oh, absolutely. The history is way longer than most people realize. The term artificial intelligence itself, coined back in 1955.
55.
Yeah, by John McCarthy. He was key in early AI. But the thinking goes back even further. Alan Turing, 1950. His paper proposed the Turing Test, that whole idea of can a machine fool you into thinking it's human?
The imitation game. And the source mentions a philosophical challenge to that later on.
Right, this gets into whether the machine truly understands. The article brings up John Searle's Chinese room thought experiment from 1980. Searle basically argued, okay, a machine might pass the test by just following rules like translating Chinese using a rule book without knowing a word of Chinese, but does it understand Chinese? Or is it just symbol manipulation? It's a deep question.
Still debated today, that one. Did people actually try to test Turing's idea with real machines back then?
They did. The article mentions the Loebner Prize. It ran for a long time, 1991 to 2019. It's basically an annual competition to see if any chatbot could convincingly pass a version of the Turing test. But interestingly, the source notes that despite all those years, none of them really passed, at least not according to the prize's strict rules.
Huh. So it wasn't just a straight shot from Turing to, say, ChatGPT. What were some of those crucial early steps the source points out?
Well, there's some fascinating milestones, like 1954, the Georgetown experiment, translating Russian to English. That's super early natural language processing, NLP, which is fundamental for AI today.
Okay.
Then 1959, Arthur Samuel coined machine learning. He was working on a checkers program that learned as it played.
Learning machines in the 50s.
Yeah. And even earlier, sort of, groundwork for deep learning, 1966, a Soviet mathematician, Alexei Ivakhenko, developed something the source calls an early deep learning architecture.
That's incredible. So how do these, older threads connect to the AI we're all suddenly talking about now, ChatGPT and all that?
The article connects the dots really well. It highlights more recent, but still foundational leaps, like Google X in 2012. They trained a huge neural network, 16,000 processors, to recognize cats in YouTube videos just by watching them.
Just by watching.
Yeah, showed the power of scale. And then the really big one, the transformer architecture developed in 2017. The source explains this was revolutionary for handling sequential data like language. And that's the core tech behind the large language models like ChatGPT that you use.
In ChatGPT, it does feel pretty magical sometimes.
It does. It's impressive tech. But, and this is important, the source adds a big caveat. It can still hallucinate, just make stuff up. It can spread misinformation. Plus, there are huge ethical issues around data use, copyright, stuff like that the source mentions. Powerful, for sure, but not perfect. And maybe not truly understanding in the Searle sense.
Good reminder. Okay, let's shift gears. From mines to maps, kinda. GPS, it feels so basic now, right? Navigation, ride sharing, you just expect it to work.
Totally essential. But its origins, purely military.
Yeah.
The source says the Global Positioning System started in 1973, U.S. Department of Defense project, for tracking troops, guiding missiles. Definitely not for finding you the quickest route to IKEA.
Right. So how did we get access? How did it jump from military secret to, well, my phone?
Yeah, there was a tragic catalyst, according to the article. 1983, Korean Airlines Flight 007, it strayed way off course into Soviet airspace and was shot down. A disaster. And the thinking was maybe precise navigation could have prevented it. So President Reagan authorized civilian access, but
What?
with selective availability. Basically, they deliberately made the signal less accurate for non-military users, a degraded version.
So even then, we only got the fuzzy version. When did we get the real deal, the full accuracy?
It took until 2000. The source states President Clinton switched off selective availability then. That unlocked its full potential for everyone.
Okay, 2000. And who started making GPS gadgets for regular people then?
Companies like Garmin, the source points out, they already had some experience with GPS from military contracts. They jumped on it, making those standalone GPS units. Lots of us had stuck to our windshields for a while.
Oh, yeah, I remember those, the TomToms and Garmins. But then came the big shift in how you actually use GPS day to day.
Exactly, the smartphone integration. The article highlights Google Maps, which came out of a startup called Where2 Technologies around 2005. What they did was digitize everything, satellite views, street view, mapping data on this massive scale, and put it in an app on the device you already carried. That just changed navigation fundamentally for you.
Which leads us perfectly to that device,
Yeah.
the smartphone. And when you say smartphone, I bet most people immediately think iPhone.
That's the standard story, yeah. But the source is quick to point out that's not where smartphones began. Not even close. The idea was around much earlier. Prototypes existed way before 2007. Like, the article mentions the IBM Simon, 1994. It had a touchscreen, email, calendar, basic apps, decades ahead of its time.
94. Wow.
And the actual term smartphone. Ericsson apparently coined it in 1997 for their GS88 model.
Okay, so if Apple didn't invent the smartphone, or even the name, what was the iPhone's big impact? Why did it change everything?
Integration and execution. That's what the source emphasizes. The 2007 iPhone brought together key things really well for the first time in a mass-market device. A good, full touchscreen interface, the first iOS, a proper mobile web browser with Safari, and that smooth multi-touch like pinch to zoom.
Ah, multi-touch. Did Apple invent that?
That's another great point the source clarifies. Nope, multi-touch research existed way before. Bell Labs, Carnegie Mellon, they were developing multi-touch screens back in the 80s. The article even notes Steve Jobs had likely seen some of that research under NDA.
Interesting. So Apple packaged it all up brilliantly.
Exactly. The source suggests Apple's genius was the marketing, the tight hardware-software integration, the user experience. It just felt right and redefined the whole category. And look at the impact. Now, the source quotes something like 95% of smartphone owners use them for internet access.
And you check it how many times a day?
Around 80 times on average, according to the source. It's a transformation built on decades of prior work.
80 times. Wow. Okay, finally, let's talk electric vehicles. EVs. This feels like a very current shift, right? Mostly linked to Tesla in the last, 15 years? But the source, it says the story is much older.
Oh, much older.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of amazing. The source traces EVs back, way back. We're talking prototypes between 1828 and 1835. Long before gasoline cars were even a thing.
Seriously? Were they actually viable back then? Did they have any success?
They did. The article notes they had a good run in the early 1900s. Often better than early gas cars, quieter, cleaner, no hand cranking needed to start them. They had advantages.
So, what went wrong for EVs then? Why did gas win out so completely?
One name, really, according to the source. Ford Model T, 1908. It was cheap, it was reliable, and Ford mass-produced it on the assembly line. That just made gasoline cars affordable for everyone. And EVs, which were often more expensive then, just couldn't compete. They faded into the background for decades.
Decades. Were there any sparks, any attempts to revive them before this current wave?
A few flickers, yeah. The source mentions a brief interest during the 70s oil crises, with little cars like the city car, and then the big one, GM's EV1 in 1996. That was a revolutionary car for its time, technologically.
The EV1, right. I remember hearing about that.
But the article notes it was, well, seemingly intentionally undermarketed, and then GM controversially recalled and crushed most of them.
Crushed them.
Yeah. Fueled a lot of conspiracy theories about suppressing the technology.
Which kind of sets the stage for Tesla then. How does the source describe Tesla's role?
Tesla is framed as the real catalyst for the modern EV era. Their first car, the Roadster in 2008, showed EVs could be cool, high performance, and have a decent range, like 400 kilometers. That sparked serious interest again.
Right, the sports car.
Then the Model S in 2015 brought refinement, tech, luxury, showed they could be everyday premium cars. And the Model Y from 2020 became this huge global bestseller. That really pushed EVs into the mainstream for you and millions of others. And the source adds, Tesla's not just cars. They're huge in AI and self-driving tech too, tying back to our first topic.
It really does all connect. Looking across all these AI, GPS, smartphones, EVs, the big takeaway from the source seems to be none of this stuff just happened. It's all built on these long, winding histories, layer upon layer of work, ideas, even accidents.
Yeah, it reminds me of that Arthur C. Clarke quote the article ends with. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And what the source material shows us is that the magic we take for granted today, AI writing code, knowing your location instantly, carrying a supercomputer in your pocket, silent cars. It's not supernatural. It's the slow burn of human effort, ingenuity, failure, and rediscovery over decades, sometimes centuries. The groundwork was laid long before the magic trick appeared.
So maybe here's something to chew on as you go about your day using all this tech. Given that today's magic has these incredibly deep, often hidden roots, what technology that feels futuristic now might already have its own surprising history? Maybe quantum computing, or lab grown food, or advanced robotics. Could their foundations have been laid down years ago in ways we just haven't fully pieced together yet? Think about that long game of innovation, how it quietly shapes everything around you. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the forgotten origins of today's tech.